Hi, it's Steph, and it is the 4th of July today. I'm going to go ahead and do a first vegetable garden tour of the 2022 growing season. If you recall a few weeks back at the video that I made called Roadside Plant Stand, I had bought this amaranth, and it is looking so lovely. It's actually growing. I had to stake it because it gets quite tall, and it's putting on these pretty blooms. They often are referred to as dreadlock plants. This one I believe is called Love Lies, and it's really pretty. Here in this bed I have a bunch of zinnias growing. So this year I've incorporated a lot more flowers in my vegetable garden. I have some herbs, some flowers, and some vegetables. So I've coined it the Potager. The only characteristic it's missing is that it's not too close to the house. It's a little bit of a walk away, if you notice there in the background. The house is all the way back there. I do kind of wish it was closer, but this is the space that we had, so we're working with it. So here I have some squashes growing. These are a type of butternut called honey nut, and they are just now starting to climb up my cattle panel trellis. And there's a little itty bitty baby. This corner gets quite shaded by a birch tree, like some wild birch that just kind of grew in this place. And we've cut it back a couple of times, but it's quite happy in its spot, so it keeps growing back. And, just something we have to contend with. So hopefully I get a couple of squashes, even though that corner there is a little shady. Here I have some pepper plants. I don't have them labeled properly, but I'll know what they are once they start growing. The three varieties that I have here are Jimmy Nardello, Cubanelle, and Jalapeno. And they are a little bit behind. I did the winter sowing method, and our weather here in Massachusetts, 6B, was a little bit wonky this spring. So it was a very cool spring, so things are just a little behind. My onions are going wild. These are yellow of Parma onions, and it's my first experience with onions. I mean, I hope they're doing well. Time will tell. I don't see them poking out the soil yet, so I'll assume they're not ready until that starts to happen. I have some more zinnias over here. And I recently, something I've never done before, but just a couple of days ago, I added a bag of hemlock mulch chips, because when I was watering my zinnias, they were getting splashed by the soil, and they were starting to get all of these spots on the foliage. And I didn't want it to, my plant to get diseased and for it to spread and eventually take down the zinnia. So I figured, well, if I put down even a thin layer of mulch, it'll prevent some of that dirt splat when I water, and hopefully that will help. Here's my first cluster of cherry tomatoes. Look how cute they are. This variety is called cherry chocolate, and they don't taste like chocolate, but they are delicious. I still have this patch of lettuce. I believe it's called Grand Rapids, and if it's not Grand Rapids, it's Black Simpson. It's one of those two. But we still had these on our burgers this week, this lettuce. It's still holding out. I think it's because, again, this corner gets slightly shaded, but it's looking beautiful, and it hasn't gotten bitter on us yet, so still good. Here I have some dahlias. These are the HS single date or first date. On this squash arch, cattle panel here, I have, so I'm not great with labeling my garden. I typically don't know what things are until they start growing. But in the back there, I have 2 zucchini and 2 yellow squash. The 2 in the front are doing a lot better. The 2 in the back towards the squash arch are doing a little bit, they're a little slower. They're a little smaller. And again, it's the lighting in here. It's not as sunny as I would love it to be for a vegetable garden, but we work with what we got. And on this side, it's a wild tangle of vines. So what I did here was I planted some cucumbers and I believe some delicata squash. The cucumbers are running wild. So yesterday I tried to untangle them as best I could and kind of start training them up. But if you don't catch these like literally every day, they just go crazy at some point and it becomes too difficult to untangle them without breaking the vine. So you know, we're just going to keep watching it. I'll keep training it as I can, and hopefully we get a couple of cucumbers. There's nothing quite like a garden tomato and a garden cucumber. But there are a few babies growing. If they hopefully got pollinated, we'll get a couple of cukes. And we also have some squashes growing up the trellis in the back. There's another cucumber. I did start finding some cucumber beetle, so that's not great, but you know, comes with the territory, right? I have some tomatoes here. These I did okay with labeling, but I take a lot of the foliage off, mostly because I want to be able to find tomato hornworms easily. And also to kind of help with air circulation because I do plant everything pretty densely. But they're doing okay. I have a couple of tomato flowers on each of them. Here's a little trick to pollinate tomatoes. All you have to do is kind of vibrate when you have the yellow flowers, the stem, and that helps the pollen drop down and hopefully give you tomatoes. So here is the back of the vine. It's kind of gonna intermingle. It's gonna grow up the trellis and I'm gonna let it kind of sprawl at the base of these tomatoes because I've cut a lot of the foliage off to give it space for things to sprawl. And some more dahlias. So the dahlias are starting with what I believe is earwig damage. So I'm going to have to quickly do something to remedy that. I have these clay pots at the top of my stakes that I'm going to throw some straw in to hopefully create a trap. And I also recently came across a recipe by Danielle at North Lawn Farm or North Lawn Garden. I'll link it below. But actually I found on her Instagram she had posted something about a mix of vegetable oil and soy sauce to help with airway control. So we're going to give that a shot. So here is my dahlia patch. And it's also doing fairly well. A couple of the dahlias that were slow to get going are getting a little bit shaded at this point, like this one here. And so it's going to be really slow growing, I think. I just hope it grows just, you know, at least a little bit. But see, this one was getting splattered also when I watered. So I put down a little bit of that hemlock bark mulch. I have some herbs. See, those are 2 more that are a little bit slow to get going. You can see that they're tiny compared to all the others. Here I have some basil and some thyme. Basil also has a little bit of damage, but I've been pinching this. I didn't use it this week, so what I do is you go to the top of the plant and you just pinch off a section, and what that does is it helps your plant bush out and give you more basil. So when you are ready to use it, or if you want to share it, you have enough to go around. In the corner there I have a coneflower that kind of self-seeded itself, so we're going to let it go. I believe it's orange. I have my berry barrels on the outside of the garden that are doing well. I have raspberries and blackberries. Here's my zucchini plant with a zucchini that we're hoping gets pollinated. You'll know whether or not it got pollinated because in a few days, if it starts to kind of shrivel up and get mushy, then you know it's no good. You can take it off the plant and discard of it. But if it was pollinated, it'll continue to grow for you, and then you want to pick it. Zucchini are best at about 6 inches, 8 inches tops. If you let it grow too much, it will get you know, those, if you forget about them or if they get hidden behind foliage, you end up with those baseball bat sized zucchini, and they're just not as tasty. They get really seedy, and I just don't like them as much. Here is a yellow squash. There's one here and another there. Well, I got festive with my manicure. Those are just those Color Street nail strips. My friend sells them and they're so cute. We all know as gardeners we can't keep nice nails. These are only going to look like this for a day. Yeah, so that's it. My nasturtiums are also looking beautiful in the back there. I'll get in closer on those. So here in this concrete basket I have that my mom gave me, there is this mix from Baker Creek. It's a salmon nasturtium, but what's beautiful about this one is the variegated foliage. Really pretty. Nasturtium have really beautiful foliage. Here are some more. And back there I have some orange ones. I tucked them in all the corners. I have yellow and some more orange down here. Look how pretty the foliage on this plant is. They look like lily pads. And I planted in the spring a bunch of brassicas, and I've been leaving them under this cover here, this insect netting, and everything is looking really good. My mom's been picking a ton of collards to cook, and I have a lot of kale that I'm going to get to, hopefully this week. I'm going to uncover that to show you. There's a lot of weeds in there too. And here are my green beans. There is that said birch tree that's creating a lot of shade. But I'm really happy with the way everything looks in here, and it's so peaceful in the morning. I just finished watering. Here's that kale. Isn't it so pretty? I think it's beautiful. That's the green kale, or I think it's actually the variety is called blue. And there is some purple mixed with some weeds. Here is the broccoli that has gone to seed, but I've left it for the pollinators, for whatever ones can get under the netting. Here I have some cabbage, but I have a hard time with cabbage forming heads. I mean, I think it's trying, but we don't know where it's going. We'll see. I have some not collards. Yeah, I do have collards in here. The collards might be, I can't remember, but I think this might be a Brussels sprout if I'm not mistaken. See, bad with labeling. But we did minimize insect damage in here this year with the covering, so that was really helpful. I cut back this patch of oregano a few weeks back, and it's bounced back beautifully. It's kind of a borderline weed, but if you like oregano, it's really abundant and perennial. It comes back each year in my zone 6. And look at this beautiful sage. My mom actually got some for tea this week. And this is also perennial. It gets a little woody, but you just cut it right down to the base and it bounces back like this. It smells so nice. Outside the vegetable garden, my pollinator garden is also starting to get in full swing. I just filled up the bird bath for the birds. It's going to be about 85 degrees today. It's only about 8 a.m., so it's nice and cool still. So it's the perfect time to be out here. This pink yarrow has been blooming for a few weeks now. My baptisia is done, but I've left the foliage because I think it's so pretty. And I really like using this in floral arrangements once my zinnias and my dahlias start going. My sea holly is starting to color up now. It's going to be a beautiful shade of a lavender blue. And the bees really enjoy it. Here's something else the bees enjoy. Bee balm. And this is a shorter version. It's a proven winner's variety. I think it's called Rockin' Purple or Rockin' Raspberry, one of the two. Some moonbeam or moonlight coreopsis. I bought this plant for $1 when Lowe's used to do their old clearance price structure. Now they've gone to a different price chart, which isn't as good, but for $1, look at this thing. It bounced back and it is huge. And I actually gave 2 divisions of it away this year to 2 gardening friends. Here's another bee balm. This one is bubblegum something. And there's at least 3 or 4 bees on this one right now. Here's another plant I picked up at that roadside plant stand, the cleome, and it's doing great. Well, thank you for joining me on a tour of my vegetable garden on this July 4th. I hope that you've enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.